Welcome everybody to How to Get Paying Clients in 30 Days Organically. We have Yemi with
Yeah.
us today, and we're very happy to have her. She's a brand new presenter for the SCORE chapter, and we are very delighted to showcase the things that she knows and can share with you. Before she starts, I'm going to talk about SCORE real quick, just to make sure you know all the resources that are available to you. Our goal is to give you small business information. One of those ways is through our website, score.org. You'll find articles, blogs, video recordings of workshops, all kinds of great information. So if you haven't looked at the website, take a look. The other way we share information is through our workshops and webinars. Those are advertised through our social media, our newsletter, and of course, they're listed on our website as well. I think the most important thing that SCORE does, however, is the mentoring. Our mentors are volunteers and they want to give back to the small business community. They have a variety of experiences and skills to share with you. We work with everyone in the business community, whether you're trying to decide if you should have a small business or are already up into the phase of getting ready to exit your business. We have a mentor that can assist you. A beginning session will be learning what your goals and challenges are and helping you formulate a plan to be successful. Getting a mentor is very easy. There's multiple ways. Probably the easiest, though, it would be on the score.org website. There's a box to put in your zip code that matches you to the chapter that's nearest you. And then there's a little form that pops up, and we use the information on that form to match you to the proper mentor within that chapter. So we do have a considerable number of people on the call today, so we are going to use Q&A. That allows me to keep track of the questions that are submitted. We'll work on those at the end, most likely. So if you have any questions for the presenter, those can go into Q&A. Everything else can go into chat. We are recording, and the recording will be posted to the website in 24 to 48 hours. And you'll find it at score.org/Boston. Just look under the local workshops tab on the blue bar. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my screen down and allow Yemi to go ahead and take over the presentation. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Such a pleasure to be here. My name is Yemi Osho. I'm just getting my screen share up as I do this as well. I am today dialing in from sunny London, well, from cold London. Um, and it's my pleasure to be here. As Teresa said, I run a business called the Change Hive, and essentially we help small and medium-sized businesses with growth and exit planning. My background before I started doing what I'm doing right now is I used to work for large investment banks. I used to work for JP, Barclays, HSBC, and the like. And then I did this fancy MBA at London Business School, and I thought, hey, listen, come from a long line of small business owners, and I'd really like to work with small businesses. And during the pandemic, I started to get involved with service-based businesses around me, helping them with growth and go-to-market planning. And over time, I've kind of developed all the stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you. So I started off originally working with growth stage and large scale businesses. And over time, I then attracted a lot of people that were trying to start businesses. And one of the key questions was how can we simplify the business startup process? Because I think sometimes if you're not careful, it gets into very much busy work and you're trying to do all this many things. And it seems like you're not really moving the dial. And I'm hoping that in our conversation today, I can share with you some ideas and principles that you can immediately apply and start to see some results. I suppose, the key thing about how I like to work is it's very much data informed approach. So I'll be sharing with you a lot of tools. But please don't get overwhelmed. I think I've laid it out in a way that is easy to follow, but feel free to take as many screenshots as you want. And I don't mind at all. If you post it on socials, please tag me. I like to be social. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to also connect with me on LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's get started. So as I was saying earlier, I'm not going to do the whole where you're dialing in from just because of time. I've got so much to cover and not enough time. So let's get into it, right? So is this for most business owners, when they think of starting a business or growing their business, I think the image that comes to mind is something that's what's on the screen there, right? Is let's just run fast as we can on this as fast as we can, and hopefully something magically happens. Can I get a yes in the chat if this resonates? Or one? Let's do ones. Let's not do yes. Yes is too long to type. Give me a one in the chat if this makes sense so far. Like, this what you kind of think? Exactly. Thank you. I'm seeing lots of ones. Great, great. Thank you, people. And by the way, if you've got questions and comments, put them in the chat. I've got it open, so I'm going to keep an eye on the chat as I go. I'm not going to necessarily stop for questions because I want to get through the content as quickly as we can so that people that need to go can jump off. So, yeah, but I think that's interesting because we're in really exciting times right now because the cost of business startup is the lowest it's ever been. Um, Ever right now for us. And the reason for that is technology. We have a lot of tools that means that we can test and try ideas before we go large in them. So back in the day, before tech was a thing, you had to like mortgage your house or finance your house to take a loan out from the bank before you could start a business. But now these days, for most business ideas, at least you can start with not very much money and test the idea. And then as the market gives you the nod, you can keep investing more in the idea. But unfortunately, you find that the old mindset prevails. We still tend to do it the old school way of trying to do a lot of busy work and hoping that something would stick. So the old mindset looks like you create the solution and then you start trying to hustle to find who would buy from you. It's like, oh, I've got this perfect product. Now you have to buy and you're trying to sell it. But when really potentially you can sell it first and then make the product later, or we create a solution that's so complicated, like a Swiss Army knife. And usually it's because we don't really know what the problem is that we're trying to solve. So we try to solve so many problems and hope that one of them is attracted to somebody somewhere and they buy. But again, that could be solved by doing proper market research before we start building at all, or doing lots and lots of busy work, right? So I see lots of like entrepreneurs or startup founders investing thousands of pounds or dollars in websites, logos, photo shoots, business cards, going on all this stuff. And months after, you still don't see any kind of traction in terms of cash, or heavily relying on ads as a way to get revenue through. But all of this potentially can be busy work that just makes the whole process tedious unnecessarily. Can I just say, so in terms of starting up right now, what would you guys say is kind of your biggest challenges? Just so I'm making sure I'm in the right audience. In the 4 points I've covered, do any of these resonate as a key challenge? Just marketing, yeah, finding clients, exactly. So, okay, how to find clients, so exactly what the webinar is about. Great, thank you guys. Okay, cool. So let's see then. So I want to suggest that really and truly the key ways to get started are really just five essential steps that we need to look at as before we start our business. The first one is being clear on our own unique strengths as the business owner or our business's unique strengths. So if you remember when I started the conversation, I said, hey, what makes me special, what makes our business special is we're very much data driven and market data informed. So my process is I'm very step by step procedural and I like to gather insights. And that is what stands me out from a lot of like other people that do similar work. So people that tend to come to me because of how I tend to work in a very process driven way and based on data, then driving the results. So it's what is your special, unique, what makes you special? We're going to work out how to identify that for yourself and also for your business. I think it's being clear on that is, first of all, the first starting point. Because too many times, as business owners, we sometimes try to create businesses that do not align with our own personalities. And that's how burnout starts, and then it's not able to sustain the business long time. So we'll talk about how to identify that. I'm going to spend a lot of time on point one. It might seem like a trivial point, but it's the building block for any business because your culture, your values are built really on you understanding what your own strengths are, because then that would drive what kind of employees you want to have, what kind of supplies you want to have. The whole thing, at least at the start, will be built based on your own personal strengths, and then slowly will grow bigger from that. The second is really understanding the pain points that you're trying to solve, that you're uniquely positioned to solve. Again, I'll talk about how to identify that and how to size it up and make sure that you're solving the right problem and the problem is valuable enough for you to start a business in. We'll talk about being able to define clearly who you're solving the problem for. Because too many times we just say, I don't know, I am trying to be a career coach, right? A career coach is too broad. Or I'm a life coach, even or even too broad, way too broad, right? Or I'm a personal trainer. But if you're more specific, or I'm a personal trainer for young moms that have had two kids and are now looking to get back in shape, if you're very clear on who your client is, it's then easier to write a marketing copy that speaks to the client, number one. Number two, it's easier to find them because you can start to think where they're going to likely be hanging out and make sure that whatever you're marketing goes to them. So we'll talk about how to identify the right, ideally the good target niche or good ideal client profile. So I probably will use the acronym ICP very often. ICP stands for Ideal Client Profile. So talk about how you would know that you found an ideal client profile to focus your work on. The fourth point, I'm also going to spend a lot of time on as well. We'll talk about how you can go about describing what you offer in a way that is clear, compelling, and answers most of the four objections that people tend to have before they buy services. So I'll tell you how you can come up with a one-liner that describes your service or your product. And then finally, we'll talk about how you can test the market iteratively to make sure that you have the right product, you have the right market, and also you have a repeatable way of selling your services or your product to that marketplace. Because I think step five is crucial. Step five is the ultimate outcome of all of this. Because once we have step five figured out, then we can then start to add fancy systems and fancy automations to really amplify the groundwork that has been done. But if you start adding systems too soon or start trying to complicate it with tech, technology does not solve bad planning. Technology just amplifies what's already there. So if what's there is not solid, then the tech isn't really going to support it, right? So I'll show you how you can go through to have clear processes so you can have a good foundation that you can then amplify with tech. Does that sound good so far? Yes, thank you. I say yes, Jennifer. Cool. I'll skip the question for now because I really want to get through all of this stuff and I feel like I've got so much content. Okay, just a quick word on AI because I'm going to use talk a lot of AI tools and how to use AI. As I mentioned already before, the key point, first of all, is to be clear on your process. AI and systems are not going to take away the need for you to sit down with pen and paper and really map out the process and for you to understand what you're doing. I would like us to first of all think of AI as your intelligence assistant. I want to say I came up with that term, but I didn't. Somebody somewhere in some workshop I went to came and I thought that was brilliant. She said, and I thought that was so brilliant. So think of AI as your intelligence assistant. So we're going to use AI a lot as a thought sparring partner. Going to use it to ask us questions and give feedback, yeah, as a starting point. Once you have clarity, you can then start to say, okay, what systems can I put in place to automate repetitive tasks? That will be step two of us using AI. And then once you've automated the repetitive stuff, is then what insights, because now you now have a lot of data coming into you. So it's what insights can I gather from the data that I'm now seeing? What patterns and trends am I seeing coming through? Right, with step three. And then finally, how AI and systems can help is you can then start to personalize your outreach to certain clients depending on the outreach you get. So you can really, really tailor and say, oh, this specific person is likely going to respond to this. So you can offer custom solution at scale using the power of AI. So this is the full picture view of how AI can support your business. But for the purposes of where we are in our stage of growth, I think we should focus on step one, using AI as our thought partner, using AI for brainstorming and really crafting out our process. And I'll show you exactly how we'll do that. So let's start. First P, personality. To thy own self be true, I think is the first starting point, right? So the key question here is what makes you special? What makes you unique? What is it about you that is your unfair advantage? What is the privilege that you have? What is the thing that you can pull out um, that somebody else next door can't easily pull out? A classic example I like to give of this is was speaking to a business owner, I think a couple of months ago. She's talking about how she wants to do, she's launching a book and she's trying to do a go-to-market strategy. And she talked to some consultant that's going to do SEO and you could tell from how she was describing it that she didn't even understand what she's paying to get done. It was just way too complicated for her. But as we go into the conversation, it turned out that she is a mom of four, has been going to her church for the last 20 years. So she has a vast network of other young moms from her church community, from her children's schools. So she has all these resources that she hasn't taken into account as she's planning her go-to-market strategy. And I'm like, Why are you not using what you already have? Why are you trying to do something you don't understand when already you have this vast network that we could potentially already leverage? So the goal of this step really is to help us to sit down, really understand ourselves, really do almost like a SWOT analysis. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on ourselves as the business owner. So it's what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? What are my threats? Because you want to maximize your opportunities and also minimize your threats, right? So that's what I'm hoping we'll get to after this first step is done. And then at the end, we can then, on the basis of that, then define what our values are and build a business that aligns with those as well. So let's get into it. Um, so suggested tools to get you started on this first key is I'm going to suggest some tools here. You don't have to use any of these tools, by the way. If you're already super self-aware and you already know who you are, then maybe these tools are just unnecessary. You can do it without the tools. But if you need some help to get that thought process going, I want to suggest some tools you may want to consider. So let's get into it. First one is Ikigai. Has anybody heard of Ikigai? Or is this new? Yes, yes, I see, yes. Okay. If you haven't, it's a Japanese framework that means reason for being. And essentially, it's a Venn diagram that overlaps four concentric circles, right? So it's a really knowing what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. The idea is once you have answers to all four and you find something that overlaps all four, then you find something that is your ikigai, that's your reason for being. And by doing that, you get into flow more easily because you're doing something that you enjoy to do. People want to pay you for it. There's a need for it. You're good at it. So everybody is a win-win-win-win all around, all around. So I think Ikigai is a good starting point for really understanding what your purpose is and what lights your fire. And ideally, making sure that that thing is also something that can be profitable and that can uh, maybe then evolve into a business. The question might then be, but what if I don't know what I love? What if I don't know what I'm good at? What if I don't know what the world needs? And on and on and on. If that's your question, fret not. I'm going to try and answer that now in the next few slides. So if you're wondering about like, oh, but I don't know what I love, I don't know like what kind of work might appeal to me, I want to suggest this tool. I links to all this stuff. I'm going to send. I didn't have it out. I'll send it out after this. But you can just they can also be very easily Googled. All the tools I'm going to suggest are free, so you don't have to pay for anything. If you went on Google right now, you Google career anchors, it'll come up. Um, so Career Anchors is a tool that was created by an MIT professor, and essentially it categorizes people's work styles into eight distinct groups. And the idea is that some people like very technical type work, some people want more general management work, some people want more lifestyle type work. So it's a what's your vibe? What do you enjoy? What kind of work do you already love? Because the worst thing you want to do is to create a business that doesn't align with your way of working, right? Because it probably goes without saying. When I say it, it sounds so obvious, but in practice, honestly, it's not as obvious as it sounds because too often we're influenced by social media. So you're watching lots of, say, somebody's Instagram and YouTube stuff, and they're a different style to you. And before you know it, you're trying to build a business like that person, when really you don't align to who that person is, right? And you start to wonder why you can't get it to work for you. It's like, yeah, because it's not you, right? So this is the kind of thing it can help you with, right? So what kind of style of working is your natural fit? So I think it's a great tool to get started. Again, tools free. You can Google it, it'll come up. Second tool, thank you for that feedback of you liking it. I appreciate that. Second tool is what you're good at. I think Myers-Briggs is a good tool for this. It tells you what your strengths are. So it essentially categorizes people into 16 distinct groups, right? So based on four parameters, it tells you whether you're mostly introverted or extroverted. It tells you how you process information. So are you mostly intuitive, so gut, or are you mostly like sense-based, like S, so you have to see the facts, the figures, touch it, feel it, smell it before you believe it, right? Um, the third one being around, are you a thinker or are you a feeler? Are you more of a, oh my God, I feel in my heart, or are you more of a, this is what I think we should do, right? And the fourth one being around how you make decisions. Are you the kind of person that lets leave your options open for as long as possible? So are you more perceptive, or are you a J, which means you're more decisive, like you just kind of, this is where I want to go, we're going to go for it. Again, I think it's a good tool to help you really figure out like what your natural strengths are. So the tool, it gives you a guide, but please don't use it as an excuse because then I find people kind of do this tone like, oh yeah, it says I'm introverted. It means I can never do anything that's extroverted. That's not what it means. It just means that your natural strengths is likely going to be more on the introverted side. So as much as possible, you want to take that into account when you're creating a business because you don't want to do something that doesn't work with your personality at all. And then again, it becomes hard to grow. Yeah. The next one, being around what you're not so good at. I think again, it's a good tool to know. Again, this is free. You can do it's called the saboteur assessment. I'll send the links to this afterwards. With this, I think whilst you know what you're good at, it's good to know what you're not so good at, or when things are not going so well, how you tend to react and how you tend to behave. Because again, you want to catch yourself early when you start to self-sabotage and maybe tell people around you, hey, if you start to see this kind of behavior, tell me and check me so that I can fix myself quickly, right? And get myself in line. So again, good to know this, I think. And then another one, what the world needs. I think if you're struggling with making sure that what the business you're creating fits into a need and the world in general, I think the UN has done a good job of categorizing the world needs into 17 broad brackets. So if I was starting, I want to make sure that what I'm creating, maybe not perfectly, but aligns with at least one of the 17 goals. First of all, it helps you realize that your work has impact beyond just being profitable. And then also, I think in terms of getting funding, I know the landscape is changing now with Trump in power, and but still, these are still valid, right? Because there's a lot of funding behind each of these goals and making sure that the world we achieve them. So, as if you can align to one of these goals or as many of them as you can, it potentially opens up funding opportunities and partnership opportunities with corporations that have budget for it, right? And then finally, what you can be paid for. Before I would say things like, okay, so you've answered all these other variables. So you put it together by either going on job boards and seeing which jobs already appeal to you as you look through, or and yeah, manually kind of trying to work it out mentally. But you can do that now with ChatGPT. So with ChatGPT, as you can see in the example I'm showing on here, I would say something like, "Hi, I'm working on my ikigai. Here am I." You basically tell it everything about you that you can share. Keep your responses concise. What kind of things do you think would be good business ideas for me? This is, by the way, for the whole idea of this is to help you from zero to start. If you already have a business, maybe you don't need this, but I think it's still worth doing to making sure that what you're trying to build aligns with who you are and your strengths, right? So I will put that in there. So I'll put all this stuff in there and say, hey, what do you suggest would be a right business type for my personality or for who I am? And it'll give you some suggestions. And again, you can, like I said, use it as a thought and a thought sparring partner and do the back and forth with it. Next thing I wanted to cover is really working out whether really entrepreneurship, again, I'm sorry, not to really discourage him, but I think it's worth talking about, right? Is entrepreneurship really for you? Because I think sometimes we underestimate how much effort it takes to be an entrepreneur. And I wanted to highlight on this slide here that it really takes, I've been doing this now for a minute, across the globe as well with lots of different business owners. And I've noticed that there are really three core skill sets that you need to have to run a business successfully. You need to have what we call the founder hat, right? Or the visionary hat. So be able to like kind of see the future and have a dream and have this big, grandiose vision. Number two, you need to have a CEO hat, someone that can take that big, grandiose vision and create like an actual sales and marketing plan, right? A 5-year plan that makes sense. So from this grand idea that's big and very ambitious to something that's a 5-year plan. And then the third component being someone that can actually execute on the 5-year plan. If you have a gap in any of those skill sets, it makes growth a bit wonky because you could either come across quite superficial because you're always talking about big, grand ideas, but never really executing anything. Or sometimes if the vision is not very clear and it's always shifting depending on who you're watching on Instagram and who you're following on YouTube, and you're taking your influence from all those people, you may come across quite hustlery, right? And this is not to pigeonhole anybody because I'm all of this, by the way. I think this is not to it's just to put it out there as a, I think I'm sharing this as tools to help you kind of see what the broad landscape is. And so you can work out which ones come to you naturally and which ones don't. Because I think knowledge hopefully then allows you to have grace for yourself and patience with yourself, and you can catch yourself when things are not going quite right. Because okay, maybe today, maybe something has kind of gone wrong with my vision because I'm always shifting ideas, or I'm not really clear on the commercial awareness side. And again, by you knowing which of these three are not your natural skill sets, then you can start to say, okay, as soon as I can get this business off the ground, I know exactly what I need to hire for, or I need to go find a co-founder that can complement me in this skill set that I don't have. Because again, I find that when people don't know this stuff and it's not very clear, we tend to hire people like ourselves. So if you're very good at sales, you probably will be attracted to other people that are good at sales. And so you have all the sales people together and nobody's ever doing anything, right? So I think this is the idea of this stuff, right? So being clear on which of these are your natural skill sets and which could you potentially I'm sorry, my friend is talking to itself here. I wasn't talking to you. Um, so um so hopefully that makes sense, right? So being clear on this three, which one is natural, which one could need more work, in which case it means that you have to proactively schedule it as you go down this entrepreneurship path. So, for example, this commercial awareness thing or sales and marketing is not my jam. I'm here to bake cakes. I love baking. It's very easy to get caught up in just doing the baking and forget that you have to actually sell and just hope that it goes away. But because you know it's not for you, then you can intentionally put it in your calendar and say, Tuesdays, 9 to 11, I do marketing and only marketing. And afterwards, I'm going to reward myself with something, right? To make sure that happens. Okay. Hopefully that's all making sense so far. If not, please, like I said, please put your questions in Q&A. So once it's all done correctly, I think all of this should then help you flush out what your values are, right? Because the whole goal of this pillar, this P1, is to really iron out your values for yourself and your business and make sure that what you're building aligns with your values, right? And I've just shared as an example what my values are for my business here, and they align with who I am, my personality, and I make sure that I build around that. This then informs the kind of clients I want to work with, the kind of people I want to employ. You see what I mean? Like that's the whole basis for it. So oh, I think I skipped. Yeah, I skipped a slide there. Yeah, the exercise at the end of this P here is just essentially to say, please go look at those. I know I've spent a lot of time on this and may feel like, oh my God, I came here to make money, not to learn about myself. But I promise it is super important because too many times the reason it's hard to grow is you're trying to do something that doesn't align with who you are. So regardless of how hard we work, it would just not work because it's not aligned. So I just encourage you to please go through and do as many of those free self-assessments or sit down with yourself as a person and do some self-awareness exercises and just journal and see what comes up because it's fundamental. This values will then build onto your organization's culture. And as we all know, culture, it's any strategy for breakfast, right? So without the right culture, whatever strategy you have would never really hold. Yeah. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I can get off my soapbox now. Done with that part. Okay, P2, pain point, right? So we get into the core of it, right? So identifying the problem. So the key here is to find something that you're good at, right? Which hopefully you'd have done in P1, right? Your personality, something that you love to do and you're good at, and also marry that with something that people would be willing to pay for, right? If you find something you're good at but nobody wants to pay for, then you found a hobby. You found something that you don't love and you're not really good at, but people want to pay for it, then you have a job. And again, it becomes hard to scale or grow because you just will keep self-sabotaging because yeah, you just get bored. So it's finding where both two things meet is the ideal. Now, if you haven't, again, this is assuming that you're starting from zero because I wasn't sure who was going to be on the call. I didn't want to assume anything. So starting from zero, you can have a problem already and you're trying to start from scratch. People tend to identify the businesses they want to get into by either personal things that they've been through already, so personal experience, as we saw in P1, or they've done some research or they've observed something, right? So maybe they went traveling around Asia and they saw pattern that they find to be missing in their home country and now they want to implement it at home, right? So it's a however you find the problem as a starting point. Then step two, and I think this is one that we mostly miss, is to interview potential clients as a researcher. So you don't go out looking for money initially, right? There's a maxim I'll probably come to later in the slide. If you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money, right? So at the beginning, you want to go out and potentially find who else could potentially have the problem you've identified and ask questions. I'll give you in some later slides some questions that you may want to consider asking. As you interview a broad set of people, you start to see patterns and groupings of people. So, to my example about being a career coach, Many people might need career coaching. It might be like a fresh grad needs career coaching potentially to get the first job. You might have moms that are trying to get back to work needing career coaching. You might find like army veterans wanting to get into civilian life needing career coaching. You might find middle managers that want to get into senior roles needing career coaching. You may find execs that want to get into board roles needing coaching. So there's a broad spectrum of different people that would need career coaching, right? So you speak to as many people that have the problem and you start to see potential segments and groups, right? And you want to group them into segments so you can see like, okay, you got grads, you got young moms, you got army, you got, and then you see, yeah, and we'll come back to how you're going to use those groups in a minute. The fourth is, especially if you plan to raise investor money or outside money, it's important to be able to quantify in dollar amounts how big or how small the market is, right? Because you want to make sure that you are starting a business in a marketplace that is growing, not one that is shrinking. So, for example, don't be trying to launch a newspaper or trying to launch a magazine, something like that, right? Unless it's some really special magazine, because that's not where the world is going right now. Or trying to launch a face mask business. So making sure that what you're launching makes sense. And then number five, I think it's worth doing some macro analysis, just common sense, quick checks to make sure that you're not doing anything that's tone deaf to the wider environment. Like they're not going to be planned tax changes or planned political changes that would make your idea redundant in 5 minutes. Yeah. So here are some tools you may want to consider for macro analysis, and I'll show you how you can do it with ChatGPT in a minute. So pestle analysis will kind of show you like what's the political, economic, social. Don't overthink it. This is just a quick put it in ChatGPT and see what comes back because it gives some ideas. Just want to just sense the idea is you want to sense check yourself and make sure you're not doing something that's just completely off where the world is right now. Yeah. So it might be something as simple as what I put on here. You may want to take a screenshot of this, right? So, but I think it's quite intuitive. Just I'll go on ChatGPT and type on it like it's a conversation. I'm looking to launch a career business, and this is who you think you might want to help, right? And why you want to help them. I usually tell it on a table because I want it simple. I don't want lots and lots of text on a table. Concisely help me assess it knows what pestle is and knows what POTS is. These two frameworks, by the way, uh, are very popular industry standard frameworks. And I'm sorry if I'm skipping over many like key concepts. Um, put in the feedback for me because again, I want to try and cover as much as possible, but I really don't know what level everybody's at. So please forgive me if I don't cover stuff that you need to know. I would try and improve for next time, but let me know in the chat if it's in the feedback you submitted, Teresa. So I'll put it on ChatGPT and say, hey, just do it, quick analysis and help me, figure out if there's something I should be aware of as I launch. And you can see, for example, it's talking about how Trump, his stance on DEI and SDG goals and how that might impact my new business idea and on and on. So it gives you all these other ideas that you may want to consider as you go about setting up this business. Yeah. Um, so like I said before, the research that this for this pain point, this P1 of figuring out the pain point is approaching potential clients as a researcher, not with a pitch of you trying to don't sell anything initially, just kind of ask, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And again, I'll come back to the questions you can ask in a minute. In terms of finding potential participants in your research, I'll use the usual tools, right? So I'll go on Reddit, Quora, Facebook groups, where you have this kind of people already discussing these topics and see what kind of things they're talking about and see if you can find friendly people to participate in a quick survey to make sure that they're the right fit or make sure that your thoughts match reality of what people are wanting. Sample questions that you may want to ask, I put on here. So it's what's your number one frustration? What have you tried that hasn't worked? What does success look like for you? How much have you spent on solving the problem? Because that will give you an idea of how much you can price for your services. And also, what have you tried that hasn't worked? Will give you an idea of what the alternatives are in the market, right? Because there's always substitutes for your services. So if I don't use career coaching, what else can I use instead, right? That becomes a potential competitor, right, to your stuff. And what does success look like for you? Again, these kind of data is important because then all this information we're going to use when we come to defining our offer. We're going to try and weave in as much of the language or the things that we gathered in the research stage in the offer statements that we give to people. Hopefully that makes sense so far. I see some questions or conversation in the chat, but I see somebody else has answered the question. So good. Thank you for helping yourselves. Good. Um, Hopefully that makes sense. If not, again, please put the questions in the Q&A so we can get to it. The third P is then making sure that you have a clear customer profile or ICP that you're targeting. As we said before, when you go out and you're talking to lots of different people, you would start to see there are groupings and segmentations of potential subgroups of customers you can target. I want to give you four criteria to consider when you want to think about who your ideal customer profile or customer target should be. So, of the groups that you come up with, so the example I gave, grads, returning moms, veterans, mid-career, mid-managers, senior managers, and on and on and on. You want to put all of that on a table somewhere, right? And then put this four criteria along it and say, hey, and the four criteria are, can this group afford to pay for your service? And ideally, not just pay one time, but keep coming back because you don't want to sell once and then have to go find new customers every time. So can they pay and can they afford to keep coming back for various other services? So that, for example, might quickly knock out people like new graduates, right? Because people that are fresh out of uni might not have the money to pay. But it doesn't mean that them not having the money doesn't make them ideal. It means that you then need to go find a third party that would then be willing to subsidize the work that you're doing. So it could be that the graduates become your customers, they benefit from the service, but the actual clients are the government because the government gives you the funding you then use to offer the services to the, you get what I mean, right? So it's but really being clear that the people you're working with can pay for your service. Like it's important. Secondly, do they have a need for what you're trying to solve? This might sound really straightforward again, but honestly, it's not because too often we're trying to create something, we're trying to create a demand. You're better off going where there's already demand, right? So if, for example, somebody says, hey, yeah, I'd like to learn French. It's like, great. So what are you doing to learn French right now? If the answer is nothing, then maybe they don't really have a need because if they really have a need, then they'll be actively doing something else to try and solve it. So making sure that there is a significant need already for the service. Third, making sure that it's a growing market, it's a growing demographic or a growing marketplace. Like I said, you don't want to be getting into the magazine business right now or newspaper business, I don't think, right now, because that's not where the world is going. And number four, importantly, the people you're trying to target have to find you credible, right? It has to be easy for you to find them. Again, will sound really obvious, but just bear with me because I see this often, especially with younger entrepreneurs, right? So you get told solve rich people's problems, right? And so they take that to mean, oh, I need to go solve problems for eight-figure entrepreneurs. And I'm like, okay, you want to work with eight-figure entrepreneurs? That's fantastic. How many are you an eight-figure entrepreneur yourself? Like, no, I'm not. Do you have any have you worked for an eight-figure entrepreneur before? No, I haven't. Do you have any friends that are eight-figure entrepreneurs? No, I haven't. So how are you then going to present yourself in a way that that group would find you credible, right? So it's important that you are they find you credible because then it's then easy to attract them. Or if you have the problem with you establishing credibility with them and you really do want to serve them, then you have to come into partnership. You have to go find somebody that has that credibility that you can borrow and in collaboration with them, look to do the business together, right? If you really would like to serve that demographic, right? So I think it's important to assess your ICP along those four criteria. Hopefully that makes sense. And just quick point on here is just to realize that there's no perfect niche. Just do the best you can on those four criteria. Start with one and trial it out at least for the first 20 to 25 clients and see how you get on. I think that's the minimum size you need to get enough data to then decide whether you need to pivot or if you just could keep going. So no perfect niche, pick one. Be aware of any risk if there's any risk with the segment that you do pick and try it out and see how you get on. Um, Point four, uh, crafting an offer or product, really defining the offer and the solution. Is it making sense so far? Can I get a one in the chat? Because I feel like I'm trying to cover like so much in
I did
get
get
a
a
one if it's
question for a clarification on the one where you say a
sure.
growing market. Are you talking about the
Yeah.
ideal customer or the actual market for the business? Can you clarify? It's a couple slides
I
back.
think it's both to be honest, right? Because the if so the demographic that you're trying to help is growing. It's not a shrinking demographic, right? So if it's newspaper readers, it's a shrinking demographic. Most people these days don't read newspapers, right? So right?
Yeah,
So as a result, the marketplace. So I think it's one and the same.
thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So, is that making sense? I get one. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate the feedback. Because sometimes talking to yourself and you can't see faces, like, oh God, I hope they're following. All right. So P4, product, crafting a product that makes sense. So for most people, they tend to have four key objections that stops them from buying. The idea is that if you can incorporate those four objections into one key value statement, then it becomes easier for them to very quickly see the value of your services, and it reduces the friction and the resistance you have when it comes to doing your sale. And these four parameters, by the way, this is adopted, was created by somebody called Alex Hormozy. I'm sure quite a few of you already know him. If you are active on social at all, you probably come across his content. I think he's great and it's worth following. But he's come up with this really great framework that I think is fabulous. So there's no need to improve what already works. The four key items being clear on what the dream outcome is. So if I was to work with you, what's in it for me? What does success look like? So if you remember when I told you to do the interviews of your ideal clients, I asked you to ask them what does success look like for you, right? So it's for and you want to be careful to listen to out for the language they use, right? Is it, oh, it looks like having a six-figure career, it looks like having work-life balance, it looks like having uh, promotion, it looks like having portfolio, it looks like whatever, the word is for that segment. You want to bear that in mind because then you want to incorporate into your marketing back to them. So what's the dream outcome? Two, what's the likelihood of them achieving it? So again, why should I believe you? Like what makes you credible to me? Are you going to give me my money back? Are you going to give me case studies that prove that other people have done it and it's worked for them? Do you have any certifications? Like, so again, what makes you credible to me? Why should I believe you? Second, how long would I have to wait before I see any kind of benefit from this? Of course, the less time I have to wait, the more appealing your service is to me. And then fourth, how much effort will I have to put into the process to get the results that you've promised me? So these four things together are the things that compromise the makeup, make up an offer statement. So putting it together, I want to quickly show you what that might look like. Um, on here, just for time, I'm going to skip a few points quickly. On here, on the outcome point, I want to say that if you're struggling for outcome, I don't think anybody should, if you really did the questioning and the survey, you shouldn't really struggle for the outcome. But an outcome ideally would align to one of the five key needs that we all tend to have as humans. We're either always looking for more money, more love, more health, more time, or more productivity. It tends to be like the key needs, the key drivers, right? So you probably would find that your outcome would align to one of these five items. So if done correctly, you can go from having a product that looks like I have a 6 week career coaching program, which is so bland. Like, what does that mean? Like, it just feels very generic to saying something like, I can help you get a six-figure FANG PM role in 6 weeks, in 6 interviews, or your money back, right? I think that seems pretty clear. And I've used the jargon in there. The jargon is used on purpose. It's used because I want to talk to a specific audience type that understands what that word means. If you don't understand that word, then you're not who I'm talking to. So don't come, right? So you are almost trying to cut out the noise by having an offer statement that speaks specifically to who you're talking to. And everybody else would just automatically, no, will not even see it because it just will not catch their eye. So something like that, right? So putting it all together should look something like that for you. So the exercise here is I've given an example here is so with this, so kind of sorry with this webinar that we put together, right? I can help you get paid clients in 30 days or less without using any paid ads, and check out my over 40 plus Google reviews that prove that I've done it before, right? So you can see clearly how it can all come together, and you can then have that as the headline for your website or for your marketing material. Yeah, so the exercise here is to do similar for your business. So it's a take a screenshot of this and try and create something like that for yourself. So get results in time frame without objection. It doesn't have to be money back, by the way. It could be reviews, it could be, something else that just reduces the risk to the customer by working with you. Yeah. Okay. Other ways to I see if it was me that created the slide. Could you repeat the example? Oh my god. Oh yeah. Is this one? Is this what you want, Gail? Take a screenshot of that. It's also being recorded, by the way, so you can also watch the recording back. Okay. Hopefully you got that then. So as I said, you don't always have to, because I don't particularly like doing money back necessarily as the guarantee, but it's what makes sense for your current marketplace, right? You have to do some research and work out like what the other offers are in your space and what makes sense. So could it be reviews, what people find credible? Is it your affiliations? Is it your awards? Is it your what is it that would make you stand out in a noisy marketplace for your audience? And finally, key five, making sure you have product market fit and what that could look like for your business. As I said at the very beginning of this presentation, product market fit, I think very simply is three things, right? Is being clear on the problem you're solving, right? So clarity on the problem. Two, being clear on, being clear on who you're solving the problem for, the product you're offering, and having a repeatable way to present product to the marketplace, right? So and if you, because then, you found product market fit when you can start to predict and estimate and say, hey, if I have an audience that has 50 new business owners, I know that at least 20% of them would convert within 3 months of me doing. Do you see what I mean? So you can start to then work out and build a pipeline that makes sense and have prediction for your business. So there's a lot more. So you have a lot more control because otherwise, what then happens if you don't have product market fit, it's a guessing game, right? You can't say, okay, I'm going to build my lead list or my pipeline to a certain amount and present them a certain information on this level of frequency, and I expect to get X outcome. That's the level of predictability you want to get to. Because once you have that, then you then have something really solid that you can then start to scale and amplify. Um, so what that could look like is, you remember the guys we did the research work with that we asked all the questions before? I think now that you've developed a product and you have a clear offer statement, it's now time to go back to them and say, hey, remember we had a conversation 2 weeks ago? Great. I now have a solution to the problem we talked about. Here is my solution. I can help you get a six-figure job. I can help you get a work-life balance in 6 weeks, and explain it to them. I'm launching a pilot for the program. I'm looking for two to three initial clients in exchange for testimonials if you don't have testimonials or for a reduced fee or whatever the case might be. I will get those initial customers. So you want to get so of the 30 plus people that you hopefully have surveyed, I expect at least 20, because I work on an 80-20 basis, right? So at least 20% of the entire population would convert, right? So if you interview 30 people, at least six of them should be interested in potentially working with you in exchange for either a reduced fee or for testimonials if you're starting from zero and don't have any testimonials. With those guys, you want to over deliver, like all out, over deliver. And once you've done that, you want to then make sure three things happen. You clearly summarize what you've done and you offer recommendations like, great. So, and by the way, if your work needs me saying working in exchange for testimonials doesn't mean that you're working with them for a whole year for testimonials, right? If your work is such that it takes 12 months to get benefit, I want to believe that you can at least deliver some mini benefit in 3 weeks or in 2 weeks or in a shorter period of time. So they may not get the full benefit, but they can get a flavor to get a taste of what your value could be by working with you. So it's what is the minimum viable service you can offer, and that's what you want to offer at this stage. Yeah. So I'll find those pilot clients, give them the minimum viable service, over deliver, and end with 3 R's. The first R is recommendation. So thank you so much for this last 2 weeks. It's been a pleasure working with you. As a next step, I recommend that we do whatever the next milestones are for your service, because you've done the minimum viable. What are the other milestones that they could also go on to do? So you recommend that for them, and they can then go on to serve to pay and work with you on a longer term basis. Number two, how did it go for you? What was your experience working with me? Can I have a review? You get a review. And again, you need to work out which review platform makes sense for your business. For some of us, it makes sense to have it on Google. For others, it makes sense to have it on Trustpilot. Others, whatever the review platform is that makes sense for your industry, making sure you're using the right one. So you want to over deliver, give recommendations of what the next steps are, so they know what they can do with you. They want to keep working with you. ask for a review, and then finally, and most importantly, ask for a referral. So it's who do you know? Who else do you know that could benefit from the service or us working together? And I think by doing that, these steps, like over 2, 3 cycles, you should have enough. You should have at least like a good first 10 customers that you've got a solid base on. And for most small businesses, I think 10 to 20 customers is plenty. Like depending, of course, the value of the service that you're offering. If you're offering like a high enough ticket service, right? Is a good basis to then be able to say, yes, I definitely now know, because in all this time, you're also validating that the service you're offering is definitely needed. You're validating the type of people that tend to buy from you, and also validating how to present it to them in a way that resonates and they're willing to buy. By doing this over 2, 3 iterations, you should have that clearly mapped out. And then from that point, this is all organic at this point and very tedious potentially. But from this point, you can then start to automate and say, okay, now I know exactly who I'm looking for. I can run ads or I can go speak on a specific stage that has those type of people. You see what I mean? You can then start to look for bigger platforms to scale what you know already works. But this is how I would go about making sure that what I have works. So putting it all together quickly, how it might look like on a 30-day plan is I spend week one doing a lot of research type stuff. So really being clear on me, right? So my personality, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, on the pain point I'm trying to solve, and also like really understanding the potential types of customers that I would like to work with. So week one is a lot of desk work and research, you sitting down with yourself and just trying to work out what makes sense. Week two is then you then trying to build out an offer. So based on all the research stuff you've done, building out like a one-liner offer that makes sense. And also then based on where your ideal customers hang out, or if it's Facebook, if it's LinkedIn, if it's whatever Quora, cleaning up that profile to make yourself look like an authority in that space. So if you're going to be a career coach and you want to use Facebook predominantly, having a clean Facebook page that clearly states out, what you do. And again, for that, Canva is the tool to use. I don't think you don't need to spend weeks and weeks trying to do a photo shoot and trying to, do logos and all this fancy stuff. Or go on Fiverr, hire somebody that could do me a quick logo, or sit on Canva, the free version of Canva. You can get that yourself and just it's got a whole lot of templates, and Canva also has an AI version as well. So you can type in Canva AI what you're looking to design, and it'll get it done for you as well. Done. Um, Step three is then really being clear on the persona and doing lots of research and getting like personalized message out to people with the offer to say, hey, here's what I'm looking to do. Would you like to come on board? And then step four, I'm focused on a lot of, week four, I'm doing a lot of actual delivering the service and getting feedback, reviews, and repeating the process over and over um, until I'm clear that what I'm offering, there's definitely a need for, and we're not just doing busy work. Just to wrap up, other AI, I think these AI tools have already kind of weaved into our conversations, but just other tools that you may want to quickly leverage in all of this. We talked about ChatGPT already for like your personality discovery. I would use that. So use those tools that we talked about, the personality tools, but then put all that data into ChatGPT and see how it can help you really clarify it. P2 on the pain point for the surveys and really doing the market research. I think you can do actual survey forms. My preference on I put that there just completeness, but my preference would be honest to meet them in person and do a Zoom call, or at least do a Zoom call because you want to see body language, you want to see like little like drops in faces, because then you can say, oh, I saw I saw your expression changed. What was that about? And you can probe that further and get a lot more clarity than you'll get in a survey form. Persona type stuff, you may want to go on LinkedIn. I find LinkedIn to be, especially if you're doing like things in professional services space, and there's a free trial on LinkedIn. You don't have to pay for it initially. So really working out which demographics make sense and the size and like how easy they are to find, what kind of patterns or commonalities that they have as well. In terms of defining your offer, I like a tool called SimilarWeb. So SimilarWeb, I think, is fantastic. So with SimilarWeb, you can take any website link and put it on SimilarWeb, and it will tell you the keywords that that website tends to rank for, and also where that website tends to get traffic from. So by that, you can start to see what keywords are important to to similar. So I will go and find out who the key players are in my industry or my space, put their websites in similar web, and I'll work out like what the key keywords are for my space, my industry. I would also work out which platforms people tend to get traffic from as well, make sure that I'm leveraging those platforms. And then for content generation and content creation, a lot of Canva, as we talked about, and so Perplexity is a tool like ChatGPT, but Perplexity tends to have a lot more current data. So it's very up to the second on what is happening. ChatGPT can sometimes be a bit stale on news and new information. I think ChatGPT is good for like historical, like but if you want more recent type data, I think Perplexity is a great tool for it. And then I think the last point I put on there about email sequences and email campaigns, I think that's something that you can do later. That's a more advanced, to the point I said about AI being four things. The first one being your thought partner, second one being to automate repetitive tasks. I think you only should start to automate stuff once you've proven that you've got product market fit. So I would not spend too much time trying to create a CRM just yet or I put it on there just for completeness. But I think initially start by, doing what we said and making sure what you have is definitely valid and there's a need for it before you then look to scale. So that was it. To summarize, we talked about how to work out how your niche is whether your niche is profitable. We talked about how to create an irresistible offer. We talked about how you might go about attracting your dream customers, right? By acting as a researcher, not a salesperson, and then how you can then convert them from research people to then becoming paid clients and repeating that over and over to get referrals and to get continued business as well. So that was the end of it. Can I just get in the chat what has been your biggest takeaway so far? And then also I'm going to open up the floor for questions.
Yeah. Do you have any recommended prompts for startups and this was submitted when you were talking about AI on the AI slide?
Promising what in what sense? I'm just going, will the president?
I can't say if Robert wants to expand upon his question. Um,
Yeah, do you want to unmute and ask me specifics?
can you share the prior page with your contact info, please?
Oh, it's on here. That's it. This is the page. At the bottom, you've got my contact details. Oh,
Oh,
I don't think this, yeah. So you got my contact. So, but the my my email address, I'm going to try and put it in the chat now. Uh, Preferred social media platform is LinkedIn, if LinkedIn is your bag. Otherwise, email works as well. Let's change how to pro.
have you had any luck putting in a growth plan into AI into let's see what oh I'm sorry, things are rolling. I usually try and work on a Q&A, but everything's in chat and everything's moving because people are adding comments. Hold on. I lost it.
Or you
Um
can, if they can unmute, I don't, can people unmute and ask the questions
I,
themselves?
we can. It takes time to do that. So if somebody needs to do that, we can, but we really only have a minute left.
Okay.
Could you put your growth plan? Okay, you did that. Okay. Your website, your contact information. Yeah, I think we got most of the questions. There was one that earlier on, you named five things, maybe four that are goals or desires for most people, and she thought maybe one of them was love. Can you repeat those?
Oh yeah, I did say so the goals was more money, more health, more love, more time, or prestige, right? So I want to make more money, get into a new relationship, get healthier, make more time, or just status symbol tends to be one of the key evergreen markets.
Okay. I saw the note about after 30 paid clients, tweak the persona because now we have data confirming target getting 30 paid clients. Does that
Say that
make sense
again.
to you?
No, no, what is it?
I saw the note about after 30 paid clients, tweak the persona
Oh
because
yeah. Oh yeah. So what I meant by that is I don't want you change. Some people, like I said about the hustler thing, is like depending on the social media influencer they're following, the target changes every other day. So one day it's gratis, the next day is moms, the next day is army veterans, like being all over the place. So I'm just saying to have some discipline in the process is like pick one, focus for at least the first 30 clients, right? Because that's your minimum number for statistical significance. I think any less than 30 is not enough to really be sure that you've got real data. And then after 30 clients, if it's still not working, then you can look to change. But try and stick to it for at least 30 clients. That was the point.
Okay. Somebody's asking about how to use AI. Actually, we've got a great recorded webinar on our website. If you want to check that out, we just did a whole hour on AI and writing prompts, so that might want to check that one out. Um, and that was a couple of them. So I think we've probably caught everything. I know, Lisa, you said that you didn't get a chance to write those down, but again, it's recorded, so you can get the recording in the next 24 to 48 hours, and get that information. Okay, we've hit the top of the hour. I want to thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Yemi, for a great presentation. And
Thank you.
we hope to see you all again on a future webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.